brain uses 20% of the oxygen that enters our bloodstream? The brain only makes up about 2% of our body mass, yet consumes more oxygen than any other organ in the body, making it extremely susceptible to damage related to oxygen deprivation. So breathe deep to keep your brain happy and swimming in oxygenated cells. Did you know in one day your blood travels 12,000 miles around your body? That's 4 times the distance across the United States from coast to coast. In our last program, we began discussing lungs and the respiratory system. Now let's look at how blood is used and why oxygen plays such an important role in our health, wellness, and brain function. From the lungs, the oxygen goes directly into the bloodstream, your body's assembly line. Your lungs contain millions of tiny air sacs called alveoli, around which the blood flows. These sacs are like tiny balloons filled with air and dangling in the liquid of your bloodstream. The air is forced into these sacs by atmospheric pressure. The oxygen moves from the area of higher pressure in the alveoli to the hemoglobin contained within the red blood cells, where the pressure is lower. Hemoglobin is the red protein responsible for transporting oxygen in the blood. The red blood cells are now essentially empty bottles, having delivered their supply of oxygen and disposed of the returning wastes. The limiting factors here affecting your health and brain function include the number of red blood cells and the amount of hemoglobin they carry. Even if your lungs could process more oxygen, your body tissue would still not receive more unless there were more bottles of red blood cells to put in for delivery. Exercise and the training effect of exercise results in improved oxygen delivery. It produces more hemoglobin to carry the oxygen, more red blood cells to carry the hemoglobin, more blood plasma to carry the red blood cells, and consequently a larger overall blood volume. Laboratory tests have repeatedly shown that men in good physical condition invariably have a larger blood supply than deconditioned men of comparable size. An average-sized man may increase his blood volume by nearly a quart in response to aerobic conditioning. The red blood cell count increases proportionately. All this means is there are now more red blood cells, bottles, not only to deliver the oxygen, but more empty bottles to carry away the waste. The removal of carbon dioxide and other waste products is just as important in reducing fatigue and increasing endurance as is producing energy. It's like your own home. Even if you keep good food around, you still have to clean out the garbage regularly if you expect to keep living there. Osmosis is described as the process in which these red blood cell bottles get to the tissue level, unload the oxygen, and pick up the waste from the tissue cells. The oxygen and food particles, now in liquid form, pass through the cell membrane. Waste products exit the cell in the opposite direction. That is the whole life cycle. Materials for nourishment and energy going in, and leftover wastes going out. When carbon dioxide and other wastes are carried away in the bloodstream through the veins and reach the lungs, the law of gaseous diffusion now works in reverse. The pressure of carbon dioxide in the veins is higher than it is in the alveoli, so it passes freely into the alveoli and is exhaled with the already used air. The design of the human body never ceases to amaze. It adapts to exercise stress and improves. It becomes stronger, more resilient, and overcomes barriers. The efficiency of this cycle and its capacity is a function of the training effect of exercise. Increasing your body's workload increases the efficiency of the cycle. Sit around and do nothing, and it deteriorates. You heard the critical truth before, use it or lose it. It is so true. At rest, blood travels throughout the large arteries at about 55 feet per minute. By speeding up the circulation to 2 or 3 times this speed, the same amount of blood can be made to do 2 to 3 times the work of feeding the cells and removing the waste. Physical muscular activity speeds up the rate of the normal heart, forcing it to pump more blood per minute and increase the amount of blood returning to the heart. Thus, circulation is increased. The benefits begin to snowball. As the volume of blood increases, so does the blood supply to the muscles. This improved blood flow, resulting from tissue vascularization, is probably the most remarkable phenomena of the training effect. It's as if our dairy bottling business has opened up new market areas of business and expanded its regular routes of delivery. The improvement in existing blood vessels can benefit your blood pressure. If you've ever had a physical examination, you're probably familiar with the routine of the doctor rolling up your sleeve and wrapping an inflatable cuff around your arm. Then after pumping air into it, the doctor slowly lets the air back out. This is known as a blood pressure monitor, and the readings from it usually add up to something like 120/80. These figures are your blood pressure. The top figure is the systolic or maximum pressure and measures the pressure of the blood against the walls of the arteries when the heart is ejecting or pumping more blood into the system. The bottom figure is the diastolic or minimum pressure and measures the pressure during the relaxed or resting phase in between contractions of the pumping cycle. The two figures represent the maximum and minimum pressures inside blood vessels. In a physically fit, conditioned person, these figures are usually lower because the blood vessels become more pliable and the resistance to blood flow decreases. In a physically unfit, deconditioned body, both figures are relatively higher because the arteries tend to lose their elasticity due to disuse and inactivity. The resistance to blood flow increases. This is all with the body at rest and the heart beating at a normal rate. Physical activity and emotional stress both increase the heart rate. They also increase the blood pressure because the heart is pumping more blood into the system at a faster rate. The rise in blood pressure may cause health problems. In treadmill tests, physically fit, conditioned men would start with a diastolic pressure of 70 and experience only a slight increase during their run. Then upon stopping, blood pressure returned to normal within a few minutes. Physically unfit, deconditioned men, however, and especially the overweight individual, might start with a diastolic pressure of 90, then shoot up to 105 during exercise, and take 10 minutes or more to recover to their normal blood pressure. Almost everyone, especially those with clinical conditions, reduce their blood pressure significantly after adhering to an exercise program for even a few weeks. The blood vessels, because of their regular workouts, makes compensatory adjustments to handle the increased workload. Almost all of the body systems do so in response to increased adaptive stress. Once again, this is called the training effect. The second effect of conditioning the blood vessels is an increased blood supply or opening up new routes to other areas of tissue not previously serviced. One of the most famous and amusing tests done in this area was reported by a researcher who set a weight on the floor, tied a rope to it, ran the rope over a pulley fastened to the edge of a table, then sat on the other side of the table and looped the rope over the middle finger of his right hand. In time with the metronome, he began lifting the weight. The first time and for many weeks thereafter, the best he could do was 25 lifts before his finger became fatigued. To expand the experiment, he had a mechanic in the building lift the weight with the finger occasionally, too. The mechanic always beat him. One day, about 2 months later, the researcher began his usual lifts, but found the finger wasn't tired at 25. He kept going and ultimately reached 100. He invited the mechanic in again and made a small bet that he could beat him this time. The mechanic accepted and lost. What the researcher suspected was that his finger muscles had undergone vascularization in response to the adaptive stress of exercise. More blood vessels had opened up, creating new routes for delivering more oxygen, and they evidently didn't open up one at a time, but a whole network at a time. There is other evidence to support this conclusion. People begin conditioning programs and agonize for months trying to get the oxygen where it's needed. Then boom, almost overnight, the exercise becomes relatively effortless. Athletes report similar plateaus of progress, improving not only day by day, but in quantum leaps. I can testify to this by my own personal experience. For some crazy reason, my close friend, Maria, and I decided to participate in a 5K running race. I was 38 years old and probably just wanted to see if I could finish a race before I died. I had never been into running. I was more into weightlifting, rollerblading, water skiing, and bicycle riding. The mere thought, honestly, of each footstep pounding on the roadway, jarring my body and my brain, was a major deterrent to running. It did not look fun. In any case, we set this personal goal and started training for the next event. We planned to run as far as we could each day until we could complete 5 kilometers without stopping. We ran one day and took the next day off. On our first day, I ran about 3/4 of a mile and I had to stop. My breathing was too labored. I could not get enough oxygen into my system. I had to stop running and slow down. The second day we ran, I could only go 3/4 of a mile. This happened the third time, the fourth time, and the fifth time. Finally, the next time we ran, I made it past the 3/4 mile mark. In fact, I doubled my previous best distance. What a difference I felt when I could finally surpass the 3/4 mile mark. My breathing felt effortless. My stride seemed easy. In just one day, my running performance doubled. The vascularization is the most essential factor in building endurance and reducing fatigue in the muscles, saturating the tissue with oxygen and carrying away more wastes. It is also an extremely vital factor in the health of the heart, which is the most important muscle of all. More or larger blood vessels supplying the heart tissue with energy-producing oxygen considerably reduces the chances of any cardiac failure. Even if a heart attack were to occur, the improved blood supply would help keep the surrounding tissue healthy and improve the chances of a speedy recovery. There's one important fact and potential problem you need to know about involving the blood vessels: fat metabolism and saturated fats. Metabolism is a big word with a reasonably simple meaning. It means the sum of the physical and chemical processes in an organism by which its material substance is produced, maintained, and destroyed, and by which energy is made available. In other words, it is the amount of calories and nutrients needed for the body to sustain life. We've already looked at one kind when we looked at cells, energy metabolism. Foods burned by oxygen are changed into energy. Tissue metabolism is another. This is the process by which foods are changed to make new tissue. Fat, of course, is one type of food. Proteins and carbohydrates are others. Fat is one of the major factors in the development of arteriosclerosis, hardening of the arteries, or plaque buildup. The plaque or crust found on the inner walls of arteries in arteriosclerosis contain large amounts of cholesterol, a waxy fat-like substance found in all cells of the body. As you may already know, this plaque buildup of cholesterol clogs the arteries and may lead to heart disease and potential heart attack. Your body can tolerate and easily metabolize a moderate amount of fat, but high-fat diets strain its metabolic capabilities. When this happens, fat circulates in the bloodstream for prolonged periods of time following fatty meals. The length of time it takes to get rid of it depends on your condition. We will discuss dietary fats and how much is considered healthy in greater detail in an upcoming program. Please remember that the training effect of exercise essentially does 3 things for the blood vessels. 1, it enlarges them and makes them more pliable to pressure. 2, it increases their number for saturation coverage. And 3, it helps keep their linings clear of corrosive materials such as cholesterol. The next program, number 7, continues on the topic of body basics, and it focuses on the topic of the heart and how it relates to wellness.